Now that we're finished with sponges, we have now finally reached the animals with true tissues, first one being Phylum Cnidaria. All members of this phylum have radial symmetry and diploblastic embryonic arrangement. Also, all cnidarians have a cnidocyte, or stinging cell, around the mouth and tentacles. The purpose of these cells is to capture prey or defend themselves from predators. The organelle responsible for stinging is the nematocyst, which has barbs and long coiled threads. The outer wall of the cell contains a cnidocil, which is a hair-like projection that is sensitive to touch. Once touched, the nematocyst shoots out the barb and thread and can tangle prey or penetrate flesh of predators that can release toxins, which can finally lyse the predator cells or paralyze them. Cnidarians have two distinct body plans, a polyp, or a flower-like stalk, and a medusa, or some kind of bell form. Some groups have both body plans, termed dimorphic, and others only have one type. Regardless, the polyp is sessile as adults, and the medusa is motile. If dimorphic, the polyp acts as the asexual phase, and the medusa acts as the sexual stage producing gametes. Regardless, like all animals, the bodies are made with diploid cells, except the gametes. Cnidarians are diploblastic, having two layers of embryonic tissues. Endoderm, which gives rise to the gastrodermis that lines the digestive cavity, and the ectoderm, which gives rise to the outer layer called the epidermis. For the most part, there are no organs or organ systems in this group. Nervous tissue is organized as a nerve net throughout the body rather than condensed into a head-like region in most animals. There is some condension of nerves around the base of the bell in medusa cnidarians to help move the tentacles. The nervous tissue arrangement is important for sessile and slow-moving animals so that they can detect changes at any direction and respond accordingly. The gastrovascular cavity, which is a digestive cavity of cnidarians, acts as both the mouth and the anus. As food is brought in by the tentacles into the cavity, the gastrodermis secretes digestive enzymes to break down food, and it gets absorbed through the tissue, and non-living mesoglia layer to the epidermis. In essence, the gastrovascular cavity acts as both the digestive and circulatory system of cnidarians. Because of the thickness of jellyfish and the lack of true circulation, gas exchange and waste expulsion must take place by diffusion within the epidermis or gastrodermal tissue. The non-living mesoglia exists to separate the two tissues, and since it's not alive, it doesn't need to do these functions. Let's get into the different classes of cnidaria. This first is known as class Anthozoa, known as the sea anemones, sea pins, and corals. There are over 6,000 species currently described, and all members of this class remain in what's called the polyp form throughout their entire life. Sea anemones have a mouth surrounded by tentacles that have cnidocytes. Food gets drawn into the mouth and enters the pharynx, which is a muscle that helps ingest food and expulse waste. This leads into the gastrovascular cavity, where it divides into septa called mesenteries, which increase surface area for digestion and gas exchange, as well as more mechanical support for the body. Sea anemones feed off of smaller animals, and some sea anemones live on hermit crabs where they collect food while defending the crab with stinging cells. Clownfish have been found to develop immunity from these toxins from stinging cells and secrete a protective mucus that prevents the stinging, allowing them to hide in sea anemones. Recently, this relationship was thought to be mutualistic, but has now been classified as commensalist, since only the clownfish benefits from this relationship. And as you recall, a commensalist relationship is where one organism benefits, but the other one is neither benefited nor harmed. So the clownfish gets to hide, but the sea anemone gets nothing out of this relationship. Corals are similar to sea anemones, only they develop calcium carbonate protective features. Coral feed mostly on smaller planktonic organisms. They also take up zooxanthellae, dinoflagellate algae, for additional glucose while protecting the algae. This relationship is crucial to coral reefs as bleaching, which occurs when water pollution kills the algae, ends up killing the corals, which provide shelter for over 25% of all marine life. Perhaps when most people think of jellyfish, they think of members of class Scyphozoa, also known as the marine jellyfish. Thus far, only 200 species have been described, which range from size from 2 centimeters to 2 meters in diameter, such as this lion's mane jellyfish. The mouth is located on the underside and is surrounded by tentacles with nematocysts. These organisms live a solitary carnivorous life. Their digestive system can be sectioned into diverticuli and may branch further into radial canals to increase surface area of absorption and support of the body of this animal. Like most cnidarians, the nerve cells are organized as a nerve net, but more concentrated as a nerve ring around the edge of the bell to help move tentacles and the body for swimming. This is also where the muscles needed to move the bell so it can propulse. It can also be used to draw in food. Scyphozoans are dioecious, meaning they have separate sexes. In other words, individual organisms are either male or female. Both of these have gonads, or sex organs, in the gastrodermis and expulse egg and sperm out of there. From external reproduction, planua larvae form which develop into a polyp, which can either make an additional polyps or can start making medusa buds. In this group, the polyps are asexual, while the medusa are sexual. The next class is Cubozoa, known as the box jellyfish. These box jellyfish are similar to Scyphozoans in many ways, but differ by being smaller, having a boxier shape, and the tentacles being arranged quite differently. In Cubozoans, the tentacles are arranged on muscular pads called pedalia at the corners of each square point, with one or more tentacles attached to each pedalium. This group consists of some of the most venomous cnidarians. This group also has a rudimentary eye with a cornea, lens, and retina found between each pedalia, which aids in hunting. In essence, these are the first animals with true organs. Cubozoans are dioecious, with fertilization taking place inside of the female. The female releases the planua larvae, where they form polyp colonies, which eventually transform into a single medusa. Class Hydrozoa, also known as the Hydrozoan jellyfish. This group contains 3,200 species of mostly marine, but we actually do have freshwater species here in the state of Kentucky. They are dimorphic. One defining characteristic of this group is that the gonads are derived from epidermal tissue rather than gastrodermal tissue. The polyp form is a cylindrical with a central gastrovascular cavity lined with gastrodermis and epidermis on the outside, with mesoglia sandwiched in between. The oral end is surrounded by tentacles that collect plankton. Siphonophores are part of this group and are a large colony of both medusoid and polypoid individuals. In fact, the largest siphonophore, this species Praia debia, was discovered to be over 165 feet long. The famous Portuguese man-o'-war has a nematophore, which allows it to fill up with gas, giving it buoyancy. It also has a colony of many Hydrozoan jellyfish. This species makes male and female only colonies. They feed on soft-bodied marine animals, and since there is no gastrovascular cavity, they have special polyps that digest the prey in open water. In my state of Kentucky, there is one species of cnidarian called Hydra, which exists in freshwater environments, but this species remains in the polyp form all of its life. In our next video, we're going to be getting into animals with triploblastic tissues.